Hey everybody, socialism on roids here. Well, that happened. Looks like the American right, or should I say, the Tea Party QAnon types, and Trumpers, and the religious right, crypto fascists. These people are finally getting their wish. They're finally getting what they've wanted for years. Roe v. Wade is officially done for. And when I first heard, when I first saw this, when I first saw this on my Facebook feed, I was like, holy shit, this this is horrible. We're just the human cost alone. But then I thought to myself, the other side of me, the side of me that has a political science degree is like, oh, well, Republicans just did the dumbest thing imaginable during a midterm election where they were all but certain to run away with it. Why? When you have a situation where Republicans won by 10 points in a state like Virginia, where the Democrat is for the last few elections has won the gubernatorial election by 10 points, and where Biden carried the state by 10 points in the presidential election, you start to ask yourself, you start to realize that if if the stomping was this bad for Democrats in Virginia in a statewide election where no turnout is never that high to begin with. Now, granted, of course, the Democrats managed to increase their own turnout in that race by like 5% on average, whereas Republicans, their turnout went up by as much as 30% in some areas, which means it was just people who had voted for either Biden or Trump showing up. There were no new voters voting. It was just one side did a better job of turning out than the other. But but that the statewide elections in New Jersey and Virginia were effectively the canary in the coal mine for what was going to come out of the midterms. By the Democrats, for the longest time, we thought they were fucked. Now, I know I look like a ragamuffin, but now it seems that Republicans have done the one thing that could drive Democratic turnout up through the roof and cause every single person who voted for Biden to show up, regardless of whether or not Biden kept any promises or what. Republicans effectively did the one thing that that had the potential to make it where Democratic turnout from this point forward was going to wind up being just as high as Republican turnout. They took what was supposed to be Biden being punished by his own party, by Democratic voters and young voters staying home on election day, to, and turned it into a situation where that doesn't look like it's going to happen now, or at least on the surface. That was my second reaction. That was my second take, after the initial disgust wore off. But I keep having to remind myself of the old adage: when people tell you they're going to do something, when people tell you that they're this way, you better listen to them. Republicans for years have said that they're going after Roe v. Wade. They've chipped away at it so much to the point where equal legal access to abortion is non-existent in like 88% of counties in this country. So they really had no reason not to go through with it, other than a strategic reason of not giving Democrats an excuse to show up. They took what was supposed to be just Biden being punished by his own by young people and by his party's base for being ineffective, and turned it into the second most consequential midterm election since the end of World War II, with the only other one being more consequential being the 2018 midterms. And we all remember how those turned out for the Republican Party because of millennial turnout. Then, but my third reaction was, okay, for years Republicans have been told, if you overturn Roe v. Wade, if your goons on the Federalist Society in the Federalist Society who've infiltrated the judiciary and turned it into a glorified legislature, if you overturn Roe v. Wade, you're going to lose everything from the courthouse to the White House from this point forward. My third reaction was, okay, why did they do this if they knew this was a possibility? If they knew that it would just light a fire under the Democratic Party's base and cause them all to show up to vote, that it would drive up their turnout to the point where the Trump cult being motivated, being so motivated by their just abject hatred of leftists, liberals, and minorities, and the other in society. Why would they do this if they knew it was going to happen, especially during a midterm election where the Republicans had one shot and one shot only to enshrine themselves into law to the point where any threat by the Democrats to stop them would be fizzled out if they didn't succeed. And that's when I started thinking about all the moves that the Republican Party had been making at the state level across the country in large population states where they actually control things like Florida and Texas. The current Supreme Court, the conservative majority on the Supreme Court, the same one that gutted Section 8 of the Voting Rights Act back in 2013, have approved the hyper gerrymandered maps put forward by Ron DeSantis and the Republican Party in Florida. A hyper gerrymandered set of maps which will essentially destroy black voting power in Florida. Now, the Republican Party in Florida, they have risen to power at a point where, at a unique point in history where older, more conservative boomers from all across the country, typically white, have lots of money, have flooded into all these retirement villages and have augmented the ability of the Republican Party to run the gamut. And I think the reason why the Republican Party are doing this is because they know that the majorities they have in places like Florida and Texas could feasibly be under just as much threat as their majorities in Georgia and Arizona. Now understand, this video is just me doing a surface level analysis. I'm not going to get into the whole deep leftist and Justice Democrats and progressives against centrist Democrats or anything like that. This is not one of those videos, just so you know. This is me just being surface level. But I digress. You can tell I just got out of bed. The Republican Party in Florida, they understand that all these boomers who have moved down there, they have an expiration date. they have a lot of money and there are a fuckload of them because the baby boomer generation was so fucking big. But they also know that whatever they need to do, like the ones in Texas who are having to fight against demographic changes and are having to lock themselves into power, the Republicans in Florida are in the same boat. They know that they got to strike while the iron's hot. And I believe that Republicans and the conservative justices on the Supreme Court who are part of the Federalist Society, who are members of the Federalist Society, who are basically overglorified legislators for them, they've gotten the marching orders from the Heritage Foundation, the American Enterprise Institute, and other right-wing think tanks, and they've basically said, we better do this while we have the chance because we'll never get another chance afterwards. I think they know that once the die-off happens and all of these older people and I'm not saying that demographics are destiny or anything. I stopped believing in that shit a long time ago, because if that were the case, 2020 probably wouldn't have been. It would have been a bigger shit stomp for the GOP than it actually was. So, but that being said, I do believe that the demographics is destiny thing, at least on a regional level, is going to be a thing. All of these right-wing boomers moving into Florida, they're not going to be around forever. These retirement villages, their denizens are going to pass on. And the Republican Party in Florida are eyeing all these tens of thousands of Puerto Rican immigrants who have poured into Florida over the years. People who are American citizens because they're from an American territory. They can't be denied voting their voting rights. They can't prevent them from being able to register to vote because they're natural citizens. And this has them panicking because they can't just say, oh, they're Hispanics and they're illegal immigrants and we can't do it. This is why you're hearing all these people like Marjorie Taylor Greene pushing all this bullshit about how they're desperate to find some way to keep migrants from other parts of the country, from blue states moving into places like Georgia, her home state of Georgia, from being able to vote, because they know that they can't do anything. They can't legally prevent someone who's a U.S. citizen, who is a natural-born U.S. citizen, from voting in their state if they move from another state. The same thing goes for these tens of thousands of Puerto Ricans. These tens of thousands of Puerto Rican migrants. They can't. Once all these boomers are gone, yeah, these hundreds of thousands of affluent retiree boomers, white boomers, they can't. They might outnumber these tens of thousands of Puerto Rican migrants, but by 2032, most of the boomers are going to be gone. They're going to be dead of old age. And the Republican Party in Florida, they know what's coming. So they're doing everything they can to maximize their ability to hold on to power before their base's expiration date, their newfound base's expiration date that they built their majorities on, kick the bucket. They understand that every other group that votes Republican in the state of Florida is stagnant. Taking advantage of conservative boomer migrants from other parts of the country who have moved to Florida is their only chance. Now you're probably wondering why I'm taking this video, which should be about Roe v. Wade and the implications of the horrible implications, the human cost of it, and turning into a talk about politics. Again, I have a political science degree. I'm trying to analyze this from my my perspective. That being said, if what Justice Alito has alluded to is to be believed, gay and trans rights will be on the chopping block next. Marriage equality will be on the chopping block next. And as someone who is part of the LGBTQ community, I'm asexual, aromantic. So I just I'm just all this shit that's being done to target the LGBT community is just that you're seeing from all across the country, all this groomer stuff that the Republicans are pushing, where they're trying to force you into a situation where the conversation is on their terms by trying to basically use the old stereotype about gay people that religious conservatives have been pushing since time immemorial to demonize folks. It's just I I don't I don't see any way we're going to be able to come back from this anytime soon unless we can find some way to pack the courts, which Biden, no matter what anyone does, he's just not going to do it. I mean, this motherfucker. I know I said I wasn't making this about us versus centrists and all that shit, but I still have to touch at least a little bit on this. But he's already just. This is the guy who kept on telling us, kept on telling everyone that Republicans would have an epiphany as soon as Donald Trump was gone, and it just goes to show you how out of touch these people really are when it comes to dealing with their opposition. They don't want to learn. They have no incentive to learn. The money's not there. And now you see all these people on the Democratic side, these older Democrats relitigating the old fights from 2016, trying to blame Sanders supporters and young people for Clinton's loss. Hell, there's already been polls done on this, showing that only 82% of Sanders voters were registered Democrats, were self-described Democrats, and guess what? Almost all of them still voted for Hillary Clinton because they're still Democrats. Almost all of them still voted for her on election day. So, I mean, unless they're willing to complain about the independents who had no ties to the Democratic Party whatsoever, deciding not to vote for Hillary Clinton, I'm sorry, but we don't have those. To those older Democrats, if you're a younger Democrat and you find yourself confronted by these people, if you're a younger Democrat, a progressive Democrat, and you find yourself confronted by older Democrats with this shit, just they don't own, neither you nor they own the votes of these people who were never part of the Democratic Party to begin with. So I don't know what they're fucking complaining about. I mean, it maybe just be David Brock and some internet bandwagon shit being pushed in Democratic Party friendly Facebook groups. But going back to what I was saying before, the Republican Party, yeah, I'm jumping around a lot, I know. The Republican Party have shot themselves in the foot from an electoral standpoint. At least on the surface, that's what it looks like. But a part of me still can't help but think that all of their hyper gerrymandering all across the country was done. The reason why they were so dead set on getting it done as quick as possible is because they knew they were going to do this. They knew they were going to strike while the iron was hot. They knew they were going to do it while they could. Now, I want to take a moment to go ahead and send a message to Jimmy Dore and his fans. Here it is, you fuckers. You said that you were the ones who kept telling everybody that there was no chance of Donald Trump getting 3 court appointments. The Caleb Maupin, Max Blumenthal crowd, you can all kiss my hairy ass. You're not leftists. You're just a bunch of damn parasites that are dragging us down. You helped put us in this situation, and I may have voted for Jill Stein, but I'm no longer proud of it. I'm no longer proud of it because I'm starting to realize that as much as I despise the Clintonians, as much as I despise the centrist wing of the Democratic Party, as much as I despise the Democratic establishment, this is one of those situations where the intra-party opposition and well, where the centrists might, they were more right than we care to admit, even if we did just, and it pains me to admit it, but we allowed our disaffectedness with the Democratic Party to be manipulated by a bunch of outside actors. Jimmy Dore, Max Blumenthal. Hell, Max Blumenthal was on the dole of the Russian state. I mean, why the fuck would you ever believe anything that jackass has to say? You know, their goal was to undermine democracy in the U.S. Their goal was to undermine the U.S. and its foreign interests, and all those pictures of Jill Stein meeting with Putin and all the recent defenses that Jill Stein has done where she's run interference for Vladimir Putin. Just to those people who keep bringing up Azov, I just have to say, hey, Wagner Battalion, okay? Just, I'm going to tell you, I'm on Team Vosh and I'm on Team Bow of the Fifth Column on this one. You guys have made it where a lot of folks are starting to reconsider whether or not they should even follow us, whether or not they should even call themselves leftists. You're poisoning the well for the entire left, but given the fact that you're making money doing it by appealing to a bunch of people who care more about getting even with the Democratic Party because of what the Democrats did, yes, they did force Bernie out in 2020, than you do about whether or not we accomplish our long-term goals. I want you to understand that. No, I want you to get this to your head that a politics of resentment doesn't typically work for us. As much as I hate the Republicans, as much as my first real beef has always been with the religious right, even before I started going on my anti-libertarian crusade, my anti-Tea Party crusade. Many of those videos are still up, but they're very poor quality. But the religious right, in the end, despite the fact that the religious right are falling apart, despite the fact that the country is becoming less religious as a whole, in the end, they won. They got what they wanted, and I'm going to say that all these white women who voted for Donald Trump in 2016, the 52% of white women who voted for him, and all these gay white men who jumped on board with the Republican Party and the Trump train as soon as they acquired their equal marriage rights through the Democrats, of course, largely through the Democrats and largely through years of working through the left to get that shit, and through liberals to get their civil rights on these issues. There's an old saying, and this is always applied within Republican circles. Last hired, first fired. The Dave Rubins of the world, the Milo Yiannopoulos of the world, these people, they're about to get thrown under a bus hard. And I know they got enough money that they're going to be able to jump on a plane and get the hell out of here, just like any of these wealthy Republicans will be able to just get their mistresses, their wife, their teenage daughter out of the U.S. and get or take them anywhere at the drop of a dime and help them get abortion access while denying that access to poor people. But if you're one of these people who are part of a traditionally disparaged group in our society, who threw their lot in with the Republican Party after you got what you wanted, Go fuck yourself. You did this to all of us. You did this to everyone. I guess the biggest difference between me and them, between someone like me and someone like them, is that I've been through just enough shit growing up in the most conservative state in America that I know just how disgusting the American right truly are at heart. I know how bad they are, and I'm not motivated by money. I'm not. I can come to terms with the fact that I was wrong. I can admit that I was wrong. I admit that I was wrong for supporting Jill Stein, for voting for Jill Stein because after now understand I still voted Democratic down ticket because guess what? There were no other third party candidates on the ballot down ticket. But I just, and I know my vote wouldn't have counted because I live in Alabama anyway. But, that's just the facts, man. But if I knew then what I know now, I never would have thrown my lot in with that. I never would have thrown a protest vote at her. That being said, Howie Hawkins is a Teamster, and I was disappointed that he didn't get more votes than he did. He actually does have a history of being pro-union, of being a fighter, and seeing all these people gang up on him within Green Party politics showed me just how much the right wing have slithered their tendrils into Green Party politics through groups like Turning Point USA's little adjunct Rally Forge. By this point, it's hard to say whether or not the Democratic Party is salvageable, but I know for a fact that the Greens, they're hopeless. So that's probably the one third party that I will never support again, especially given all the shit that's been going on behind the scenes, and Kirstjen Sinema being a former Green Party candidate, and her and there being a possibility that she was involved in all that Rally Forge shit, and just how widespread it is, and all these people pushing Jesse Ventura, even though Jesse Ventura has a history of calling for austerity measures. Yeah, I know that's going to piss off a lot of Ventura stands, but I really don't give a shit. I can't give a shit. But just Roe v. Wade. Again, I'm going to say that when people tell you who they are, you best believe them. Republicans, hardline right-wing reactionaries, Tea Partiers, QAnon people, Trump supporters. These people have been a strain in our country's political culture since the late 19th century. These people have been saying that they intended to overturn Roe v. Wade since at least since no. These people really didn't start talking about wanting Roe v. Wade overturned until like 10 years later, until 10 years after Roe v. Wade was the law of the land. And then all of a sudden they started talking about it. It's like they couldn't talk about busing her anymore because they knew going against civil rights for black people was a no-go. So they had to find some new issue to fight the culture wars over. And they've been milking that teat for all it's worth ever since. And wealthy Republicans, they're not going to be affected by it. Everyone else will. And all these white women who voted Republican just because they had money, they're about to find out the hard way that like Trump supporters who wound up losing access to food because of Trump cutting funding for Meals on Wheels, they're about to find out that like every other part of the conservative movement, they too will be caught in the blast radius of their own voting habits. Again, I'm sorry if for my part in all of this, though I'm still angry at older Democrats for not listening to the young. But now we have a fight ahead of us. A long fight.